If you clicked on this English lesson, you are probably doing two things. You are wanting to improve your English because you are studying for the IELTS or the TOEFL, or maybe you just want to improve your English. The other reason is you care about American politics or American news. And for the last couple weeks, I have been doing English lessons about the political news in the United States, and another big bombshell just dropped. Now, I used an idiom there. A bombshell dropping, it means something big happened in the news, and that something big is President Biden is choosing to drop out of the race. So maybe we should talk about that first. What does drop out mean? Well, in the picture, you can see two different drops. One is a green drop of paint, and one is a water drop. So that's the noun. But when we put drop into an English phrasal verb, it changes quite a bit. In drop out, you can see right down there means to stop participating in something before it is finished. Let's say somebody is running a long race. Maybe they get tired. They decide to stop running in that race. We can say that they dropped out. There are also political races. So, up until a couple hours ago, President Biden was running for president, but he chose to stop that. And we say that he has dropped out of the race. Let's look at a sentence using drop out. Joe Biden decided to drop out of the race today. Drop out is the first English phrasal verb I want to teach you in this lesson, but not the last. The next word is announcement. What is an announcement? Well, it's a noun. Announce is the verb. Let's look at the definition. An announcement, it's a public or formal statement about something. When you see public, think people. Formal, well, maybe they got up in front of everybody and said something. Maybe they had an audience. That didn't happen with President Biden today. He wrote a tweet on X, I believe. That's how he announced he is no longer running for president. Here's a sentence using announcement. Joe Biden made an announcement about dropping out. So, our first two terms in one sentence, I hope that helps you. Okay, those are the first two terms. We still have 18 to go, but this is just a reminder. If you are enjoying this English lesson, please hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another English lesson. Hey, it's me. Let me interrupt for just a second. I forgot to say, in the description is a list of all the terms I'm teaching with those definitions and the sentences. Back to the lesson. The next term I would like to teach you is supporter. Now, take a look at that picture. You have a soccer player there, and then what looks like a lot of people who like that soccer player because they are cheering. So soccer teams can have supporters, but presidents, politicians can also have supporters. So let's look at the definition. A supporter is a person who agrees with and helps a particular person or group. So Joe Biden has a lot of supporters. He has a lot of people who like him. And now let's look at the sentence. Joe Biden has many supporters. He hopes his supporters will support Harris. So if you missed it earlier, President Joe Biden says, I'm no longer running for president. Instead of me, you should vote for my vice president. and her name is Kamala Harris. Platform is the next one. Now, you might see a platform in a train station. It's a place where you wait for your train, but this is different. A platform is a political party's or candidate's statement about how they feel. So, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are both Democrats. The Democrats have a platform. They all feel the same way about certain things, more or less. I did make an English lesson about how most Republicans think and how most Democrats think. If you want, I will leave a link for that in the description. Here is a sentence using platform when it comes to politics. Joe Biden's platform included healthcare change. So that's one of the things Democrats believe in. They want everyone to have healthcare. That's part of their platform. Harris will run on a similar platform. Both President Biden and Vice President Harris feel the same way about a lot of things. Abortion, gun control. Those are some of the big issues when it comes to platforms and politics. Withdraw is the next one. If you look at that picture, there's a man who is withdrawing money from an ATM machine. That means he is taking out money, to use another phrasal verb. But when you withdraw yourself from a race, let's look at the definition: to take back or to remove. So Joe Biden decided to withdraw from the presidential race. He said, I am not participating anymore. I am no longer running for president. What about nominee? There you can see a picture of Vice President Harris. What is a nominee? It's a person who is formally entered as a candidate. Biden was the nominee for the Democratic Party. Now, we are unsure who the Democratic nominee is. Now, Joe Biden would like it to be Kamala Harris, but that's not exactly how it works. We will talk about the verb endorse in just a minute. Press conference is the next term I would like to teach you. It's a meeting organized to officially give out information to the media or news reporters. Presidents will often hold press conferences to explain how they are feeling about something, to explain something important they just did. Here's a sentence: Biden held a press conference to explain his reasons for dropping out of the race. Now, I am recording this just a couple hours after Joe Biden made his decision, and he did not have a press conference. He tweeted something on X. Maybe later in the week, he will hold a press conference to officially say he is dropping out of the race. Endorse. So President Biden did drop out of the race, and he endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris. What does endorse mean? To publicly and officially say that you support someone or something. Here's a sentence: Joe Biden dropped out of the race and he endorsed Kamala Harris as his new nominee. But just to be clear, she is not the Democratic nominee. In a couple weeks, the Democrats will have what they call their convention. They will hold something called the DNC in Chicago. All of the important Democrats will get together and then they will nominate someone to run for president for the Democrats. All year, it has been President Biden. Now he has dropped out. At that convention, they will pick a nominee. Could it be Kamala Harris? Yeah, it could be. Could it be somebody else? Yes, that could also happen too. Fundraising. This is very important when it comes to running for president. This involves money. fundraising. It's collecting money for a particular purpose. So, Republicans and Democrats both need to do fundraising. They need to come up with money so they can run their campaign. Here is a sentence using fundraising. Campaigns need to do fundraising to support their activities. It costs a lot of money to fly in a plane to have a rally. It costs a lot of money to take out ads on television. Resign. What does that mean? It means to give up a job or a position in a formal way. So if you have a job, you could resign from it. And the formal way you would do that in the United States is you would give your 2-week notice. That means you tell your boss, hey, I'm no longer going to be working here, and that is going to start in 2 weeks. You are officially resigning. Here's a sentence using Joe Biden as an example. Biden did not resign. He simply dropped out of the race. So as I'm filming this now, President Biden is still our president. If he resigns, the vice president, Kamala Harris, will become the new president. It doesn't seem like that is going to happen. But with all of the news that has been happening in the past couple weeks, who knows what's going to happen? Here is an idiom: to throw in the towel. In that picture, you can see a stack of bath towels. You might use a towel to dry off after you get out of the shower. But this idiom is different. To throw in the towel means to give up or admit defeat. Admit you can't do something. You quit. Here's a sentence. Joe Biden decided to throw in the towel and drop out of the race. The next idiom I would like to teach you is to hit the campaign trail. In the picture, you can see some backpackers walking on a trail. Think of a road where cars go. It's paved. It's very smooth. A trail can often be found in the woods, and that is like a path you can walk on. The campaign trail is a little different. That means you start campaigning for office. Vice President Harris will need to hit the campaign trail as soon as possible. She needs to visit a lot of places in the United States to tell people, hey, vote for me. That's what it means when a candidate hits the campaign trail. Out of the running. You will hear this quite a bit when you watch the news in English. President Biden is now out of the running. What does it mean? No longer in a competition or participating. He's no longer doing the things that would make him president at the end of the year. Joe Biden has taken himself out of the running. The next idiom I would like to teach you is to take a back seat. Now, in a normal, typical car, you have a front seat where the driver sits, and then you have the back seat. That's where passengers will sit. The lady in the picture is taking a picture with her phone, but she's sitting in the back seat. But the idiom means to allow someone else to have control or responsibility. Here's a sentence. Joe Biden decided to take a back seat and support another candidate. So he's only taking a back seat when it comes to campaigning. So far, he is still the president. Get the ball rolling. That means to start something. President Biden's announcement got the ball rolling for Vice President Harris to enter the race because he took a back seat. He's no longer the leader running for president. He has endorsed Kamala Harris, so now she needs to get the ball rolling. She needs to start really campaigning for president. Give up. You might know this English phrasal verb already, but let's look at the definition. It means to stop trying, to quit. He did not give up easily, but eventually he dropped out of the presidential race. President Biden gave up running for president. Okay, here's another English phrasal verb, to take over. What does it mean? To now be the boss or the leader. Another candidate will take over his place in the race. Step down. Don't you love English phrasal verbs? Hopefully, this lesson is helping you. But to step down means to resign or leave a position. Joe Biden did not step down as president. He's still our president. He chose to drop out of the race. Carry on. Take a look at that picture. I'll make it a little bigger for you. This is clearly on an airplane, and you can see what looks like a flight attendant or a passenger putting on a big piece of luggage. She's actually putting it in, we would call that the overhead bin. So the carry-on is the piece of luggage you bring on a plane. But that's not how we would use it in the news, at least not now. The big news is President Biden dropping out of the race. So to carry on means to continue. He's not carrying on, but Trump and Harris will carry on with their campaigns. They are going to continue to do the work that they hope will help them become president. Move on. In the picture, you can see somebody moving. That means to go from one house to another house, maybe one apartment to the other. But move on is a phrasal verb we use meaning to leave something behind and go on with something else. Joe Biden decided to move on to other things when a new president takes over in January. I hope you now feel a little more confident in your English when you listen or read the news. If you are looking for more English lessons like this one, there is a playlist with a bunch of news stories that involve politics. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. If you clicked on this lesson, that means two things. One, you want to improve your English, and two, you are wondering about American politics. So in this English lesson, we are going to do both. If you are studying for the IELTS or TOEFL exams, this will definitely help. Over the past couple weeks, I have made English lessons about President Trump or former President Trump, President Biden, and now that Kamala Harris is entering the presidential race, we should do an English lesson about her. In this English lesson, you will learn some difficult vocabulary words, also some English idioms, and we will talk about those pesky English phrasal verbs. So let's get right into it with talking about a couple things that relate to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was born on October 20th, 1964, in Oakland, California, USA, making her almost 60 years old, which, when you think about it, is pretty young compared to President Trump, who is 78 years old, and President Biden, who is 81 years old. She is married, and the man in that picture, let's talk about him really quickly. Her husband, Douglas Amoff, is an American lawyer who is the second gentleman of the United States. Let's talk about that term. Second gentleman, because Kamala Harris is the current vice president. If she gets elected, his title will change to first gentleman. Right now, Joe Biden's wife, Jill Biden, or Dr. Jill Biden, her title is first lady. Aw, look at cute little Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was a U.S. Senator for California from 2017 to 2021. She was the second Black woman ever to be a senator. And just in case you don't know where the state of California is located, it's right there in red. It's on the West Coast. She is from Oakland, but right across the river is a city called San Francisco, a city maybe you have heard of. The first term I would like to teach you in this lesson is nominee. And for each term, I will have a simple definition and an example sentence. I always forget to say this, but in the description is a list of all of the terms we talked about in this English lesson. Let's look at nominee. It's a person chosen to run for a political office. Here is the sentence. Kamala Harris is not the Democratic nominee for president in 2024. She might be soon, but as of the time of this recording, she still needs a few more votes. But that could happen at the Democratic National Convention. Let's talk about this for a second. You might also hear it called the DNC for short. That is an acronym for Democratic National Convention. Quite a mouthful. Well, what is it? It's a large meeting held by the Democratic Party every 4 years to choose their presidential nominee. Our other major political party, the Republicans, held their convention last week in the city of Milwaukee. In a few weeks, the Democrats will do the same thing in the city of Chicago. All of the powerful Democrats will get together and choose a nominee to run for president. I don't see how it isn't Kamala Harris. It looks like Kamala Harris will be facing Donald Trump in the general election for president. Here is a sentence for you. Kamala Harris could be officially chosen as the Democratic nominee at the DNC next month in Chicago. I've been watching the news quite a bit and I hear this term a lot. Sweepstakes. What does that mean? Sweepstakes is when people guess who will be chosen as the next vice president during an election. So when Kamala Harris becomes the nominee, she is going to need a running mate. We will talk about running mate in just a second. When President Biden was running for president, his running mate was Kamala Harris. Now that he has dropped out, Kamala Harris needs to pick a vice president. I'm going to say a big term here, vice presidential nominee. Not easy to say. She is probably going to choose either a senator or a governor. Now, a governor is the leader of a U.S. state. Here's a sentence using sweepstakes. Everyone was excited about the sweepstakes, wondering who would be the new vice president. And remember, it's technically vice presidential nominee because they haven't been elected yet. Inauguration. Depending on who gets elected president, either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, there will be an inauguration. What is it? It's an official ceremony to start a new president's term. If Kamala Harris wins, her inauguration will be in January. That is the crazy thing about presidential elections. We elect our presidents in November, and it's not until the following January when presidents actually take power. And in the picture, this is Kamala Harris when she was being sworn in for vice president. When someone is sworn in, they raise their right hand. They probably put their left hand on a Bible or another holy book, and then they have to promise to be true to the United States. Okay, we are going to get into more idioms a little later in the lesson, but I wanted to talk about this idiom right now, lame duck. When President Biden said he is no longer going to run for president, he became a lame duck president. What does that mean? The leader who is still in power, but will soon leave because they are not running again or have lost an election. In 2020, Donald Trump was a lame duck president from November to January because Joe Biden said he is not running. He will not be elected president this year. So for the rest of his term, he is a lame duck president. Here's a sentence using lame duck. After Biden chose to drop out, he became a lame duck and had less power to make changes. It doesn't always happen, but often when a president is leaving office, they aren't as powerful. They can't get as much legislation done. Legislation, it's a fancy way to say have laws made, to get laws passed. Okay, I've mentioned running mate before. Hopefully this is an easy one. What's a running mate? A candidate for vice president chosen by the presidential candidate. Kamala Harris chose a popular senator as her running mate. That sentence isn't true. At least while I am recording this, she has not picked a running mate yet. Now would be a really good time to remind you to like this English lesson if it's helping you learn English. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe so you never miss another English lesson. Oh boy. English idioms. These things don't make any sense. The only way you will know what they mean is if you study them. So let's study them together. In the running. Now, in the picture, you can see a person running. You probably know that verb, but when it comes to idioms, run probably doesn't mean anything like the run you already know. So let's take a look. In the running means having a chance to win. And we will use that verb for political office, like he is running for president. So if somebody is in the running, that means they have a chance to win. Kamala Harris is definitely in the running for the presidency. Okay, how about this one? To throw your hat in the ring. If you look at that picture, it's literally a hat inside a boxing ring. But of course, it's an idiom. It doesn't literally mean that. It means to announce one's intention to run for office. So this past weekend, Kamala Harris threw her hat into the ring and said, "Hey, I'm running for president." Here's a sentence. Kamala Harris decided to throw her hat into the ring for president. Dark horse. You will hear this a lot when it comes to politics. And what is a dark horse, or what is a dark horse candidate? A candidate who is not well known but could win. Here's a sentence. Kamala Harris was not a dark horse. She was always a strong candidate. A lot of people knew her. Dark horses are not really well known. If I had to pick a dark horse for the 2024 presidential election, I would say this guy. His name is Robert Kennedy Jr. He's not a Democrat. He's not a Republican. He's an independent. Love this one. Hit the ground running. Hit the ground running. That means to start working hard immediately. After becoming the nominee, Kamala Harris hit the ground running with her campaign. And I have talked about campaign earlier in another English lesson. I will leave a link to that English lesson in the description below. Here is another idiom that we use with politics, and some of these we use in everyday life too. So, out of the blue. What does that mean? It means something that happened unexpectedly, something you didn't know was going to happen. It was a surprise. Kamala Harris's announcement to run for president did not come out of the blue. You know what kind of came out of the blue is when President Biden said, "I'm not going to run for president anymore." He is actually going to address the nation tonight and explain why he doesn't want to run for president anymore. We've had one other president who was their party's nominee drop out of the race, and that president was named Lyndon Johnson. It happened in 1968.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
Okay. Here are a couple pesky English verbs. I call them pesky because they are so hard. Carry out. You might know what the verb carry means. It means to lug things, hold things in your hands and move them from one place to another. But carry out, it's like so different. It means to do or complete a task. Her team worked hard to carry out all campaign activities smoothly. And one of those campaign activities might be going door to door, knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, would you mind voting for Kamala Harris? She is a really good candidate." What about count on? You might know the verb count, like one, two, three, but the English phrasal verb count on doesn't really have anything to do with counting numbers. It means to rely on someone or something, like you can trust them to get the job done. Kamala Harris can count on her supporters to vote for her. Hey, and you can count on me to deliver the best English lessons I can. Hey, if you have made it this far in the English lesson, you really want to learn English. Congratulations. Pull off. Another English phrasal verb. That means to succeed in doing something difficult. It was hard, you worked hard, and you did it. So maybe already you have been able to pull off having an English conversation with a native English speaker. That's really hard to do. If you've done that already, congratulations. Here is a sentence with Kamala Harris and pull off. It was difficult, but Kamala Harris pulled off a great debate performance. And this hasn't happened yet, but there will be a time when Kamala Harris debates Donald Trump. That should be very interesting to watch. This next one, get. That verb might be the hardest verb in the English language, but the phrasal verb get across means to communicate an idea clearly. Hopefully, I am getting across these difficult terms to you. Hopefully, you are understanding them. Here's a sentence using get across. And of course, get is an irregular verb. In the past tense, it becomes got. Kamala Harris got her message across effectively at the Democratic National Convention. That is a mouthful. That is not easy to say. It's a very advanced English sentence. Let me say it one more time. Kamala Harris got her message across effectively at the Democratic National Convention. That's it. Thank you for staying until the end. You might want to learn some more English. So, right down there is a whole playlist about English and politics. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. If you clicked on this English lesson, that means you want to improve your English and you also like American politics. In today's English lesson, we are going to watch a press conference and talk about the English idioms we hear, the English phrasal verbs, and any difficult vocabulary. This English lesson will help you if you want to have better conversations or if you are preparing for the IELTS or TOEFL exams. I have watched this press conference and I took notes on what will be helpful to you if you are learning English. The first thing we should probably talk about is what is a press conference or what is a press briefing. And for each term or idiom or phrasal verb, I will have a picture that will help you. I will have a simple definition and I will use it in a sentence. Let's work on your English listening and reading skills right now. What is a press conference or a press briefing? It's a meeting where politicians speak to news reporters. They are sometimes called the press and answer their questions. The mayor held a press conference to discuss the city's laws. Now, this press conference is for President Biden. President Biden is a very busy man, or I think he is a very busy man. So he has somebody called a press secretary. What is a press secretary? Right down below. It's an official who speaks to reporters for politicians because they are busy. The press secretary gave a statement to explain the new policy. Let's watch a little bit of this press conference, and then I will be back to explain all of the difficult things.
I'm doing okay, thank you.
I haven't seen you in a while.
Well, you guys haven't had a press briefing since President Biden dropped out of the race. So
The president hasn't been here. He just got here yesterday. And now I'm here taking your questions.
thank you.
And I've taken about 3 or 4 at this point from you.
One is more of a Republican and one is more of a Democrat. So let's talk about that first. The woman who was speaking, her name is Karine Jean-Pierre. Sounds like a very French name, right? Well, that's because she was born in France. She speaks French, but I don't know about you. I can't hear any accent. She sounds American to me. But she is President Biden's press secretary. She answers questions from reporters on behalf of President Biden. Now, the guy sitting down, his name is Peter Doocy, and he is a reporter for Fox News. So let's talk about Fox News and CNN. Fox News, probably Trump supporters watch Fox News more often. In other words, Republicans, this is more of a Republican news station. They say good things about President Trump and they say bad things about President Biden. If you have ever heard of CNN, they are like the opposite. They are more for Democrats. They say nice things about President Biden and not so nice things about President Trump.
Well, it would seem that people in this White House knew that President Biden was slipping, and it was hidden from the American people. So who ordered White House officials to cover up a declining president?
I know that that is a narrative that you love.
A lot of things we should talk about. They mentioned a phrasal verb, dropping out. I've mentioned this in previous English lessons, but let's review it here just in case you haven't seen those English lessons. Dropping out. It means to quit something before finishing, like school course. Hopefully, you have never signed up for an English class and found that it was too hard. If it was too hard and you didn't finish it, you dropped out. Or maybe you were running a race and it got very hard. You stopped running. You did not finish. Here is a sentence using the English phrasal verb, dropping out. She thought about dropping out of college because it was getting too hard. The reporter also mentioned slipping, but I want to talk about the verb slip first, and then we'll talk about an English phrasal verb, slip up. So the verb slip means to accidentally lose your balance or footing and fall. And you can see in the picture that person is definitely slipping. They are falling down to the floor and it will probably hurt. Be careful not to slip on the wet floor. A lot of times when you slip, you don't fall all the way to the floor. You just almost fall. But when the reporter said that President Biden was slipping, it doesn't really have anything to do with falling. Let's take a look at what it means. It means not doing as well as before or feeling less healthy. Here's a sentence. Some people worried that President Biden was slipping and not keeping up with the tough job. Now, they didn't mention this in the press briefing, but let's talk about the English phrasal verb slip up because Americans use it all the time. Slip up means to make a mistake. I slipped up and forgot to do my homework. I hope that has never happened to you. Another English phrasal verb here that they used in the press conference. Americans use this all the time. A cover up. A cover up. Actually, The way I used it there, the way they used it, it's not an English phrasal verb. It's a noun, a cover up. And that means when someone tries to hide the truth about something illegal or embarrassing. There was a cover up to keep the news from the public. Some Americans think that people around President Biden were trying to cover up how bad his memory was, how bad his health was. This is an English lesson, so I am not going to give my opinion. Feel free to leave your opinion in the comments. And also, if you are finding this English lesson helpful, please click the like button and subscribe so you never miss another English lesson. The reporter also mentioned the president might be declining. So there are a couple different ways we use declining in English, but this is the way he meant it. Declining president. This is a president who is losing support or power or even health. The person in the picture looks happy, but she is a little older and her health might be declining. It might not be as good as it was when she was younger. Let's face it. That is going to probably happen to all of us. Our health will decline. Our memory, remembering things, it will probably decline as we get older. Here is a sentence using declining president. The declining president struggled to gain public approval. Public approval. That means people like him or her. Maybe we will have a female president in the United States in 2025. The press secretary says that's the narrative. What does that mean? In the picture, you can see there is a book. So the narrative is a story or an explanation people tell about an event or a situation. When she says the narrative, she's talking about how Republicans are saying there was a cover up surrounding President Biden's health. Let's use the narrative in a sentence. The narrative about the event changed after new facts were discovered. Let's watch a little more of the press conference and then I will be back to explain it.
To your first question, it is not a cover-up. I know that is the narrative that you all want. It is not. I'm going to say this again, and you're going to hear directly from the president. I hope you listen tonight. I think it's going to be incredibly powerful and important. The Oval Office, presidents, as you know, when they make speeches from the Oval Office, it's because there are important moments that they want to directly make sure that the American people hear from them. And it's obviously going to be done in prime time.
In that last little bit, Miss Jean-Pierre said Oval Office. But before we talk about Oval Office, let's talk about the shape, oval. In the picture, you can see that is an oval. It's like almost a circle. Take a look below. A shape that's almost a circle, like a squished circle. Spoon. Have you ever seen a spoon in English? I'm sure you have. Most spoons have an oval shape. The spoon was oval shaped. Now, she mentioned Oval Office. So let's talk about what the Oval Office is. It's the official office of the President of the United States in the White House. And last night, President Biden gave a speech from the Oval Office officially announcing he was no longer running for president. And it was done in prime time, she said. What does that mean? That means shown on TV during the evening when most people watch, like 7 p.m., 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. That's like prime time television. Here's a sentence using prime time. The show is done in prime time because it's very popular. All right, let's go back to more of their fighting, and then I will come back and explain what they meant.
I would listen to the president. And then what I will say is that it is not easy making a decision that the president made on Sunday. It is just not. It is not. And as you all reported, it is historic. It is unusual. This is not the norm. And making a decision like that for someone who has been in public service for 54 years, U.S. Senator for 36, President to Vice President to President Obama for 8, and now a first term as President himself. These are not easy decisions to make. They're just not. And so the fact that he was able to make that decision in a selfless way, that's admirable.
One of the decisions he made, President Biden wants Vice President Harris to be the standard bearer of the party now.
This is not the norm. What does that mean? This is not normal, usual, or typical. Here is a sentence using not the norm. Seeing snow in July is not the norm here. Yeah, where I live, July is like the hottest month of the year. I don't think I have ever seen snow in July. It's not normal. Public service was mentioned. Public. That always means people. Public. It's a job or work done to help people or government. Here is a sentence using public service. The fire department provides a public service by keeping us safe. Maybe you have heard the word selfish. That means somebody only cares about themselves. But selfless is the opposite. It means caring more about other people's needs and wishes than your own. The nurse was very selfless, always putting her patients first. If that nurse was selfless, let's say she's tired. She doesn't think about her own needs. She worries more about her patients. Do you have words in your own language that are hard for you to say? This is one word that's kind of hard for me to say, so I often don't use it, but I practiced on saying it before I recorded this. Admirable. Admirable. Admirable means deserving respect and approval. Her dedication to helping others is truly admirable. 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 See, I knew I was going to mess it up. Admirable. Standard bearer. What does that mean? A person or thing that represents a cause, group, or idea. It's like the perfect example of something. Here's a sentence. She is the standard bearer for the new school policy. They mentioned political party. I've talked quite a bit about this. We have two major political parties in the United States, Republican and Democrat. I mentioned that just in this lesson, but she's going to mention simply party. Just know that that means political party. Let's watch some more and then I'll be back.
And so the fact that he was able to make that decision in a selfless way, that's admirable.
One of the decisions he made, President Biden wants Vice President Harris to be the standard bearer of the party now. Does she still want to get rid of ICE?
You have seen what this administration has been able to do in the past 3.5 years, and they did that with the vice president as a partner in that. And Republicans got in the way. The president went around Republicans and was able to get thousands of personnel at the border, and now we are seeing a 50% drop at the border.
Ms. Jean-Pierre mentioned ICE. It's not the type of ice you are thinking of. You can see in the picture there is a block of ice, but no, we are talking about ICE agents. What are ICE agents? It stands for something really long. We never say this, but I will say it just so you know what it is. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It's an acronym. The I, immigration, C, customs, E, enforcement. They are police that work to keep illegal immigrants out of the United States. She also mentions a 50% drop at the border. The border she is talking about is the border between the United States and Mexico. And I think what she is saying, even though she never fully says it, she just says like a 50% drop, meaning like half as many people are crossing that border illegally. Whew, this was not easy. I hope your English is a lot better after you've watched this lesson. Maybe you want to watch it twice or 3 times. If you're looking for more English, there is a whole bunch of lessons right down there about politics in the United States. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Hello, and welcome to this English lesson where we are going to talk about the recent news story that happened in the United States. There was an attempted assassination on former President Trump. Now, I just used a couple pretty difficult words in English. If you don't know them, you will by the end of this lesson. There are going to be some difficult terms we are going to talk about. So I suggest you watch this English lesson a couple times. And in the description is a list of all of the terms we are going to talk about. There are also definitions and example sentences. So just a few hours ago, former President Trump was giving a speech in which there was an assassination attempt. So, why don't we start with that term, assassination? It's a big one, right? Assassination. And in the picture, I have one of our former presidents, that is Abraham Lincoln. He was president back in the 1860s, but he was actually assassinated, which of course is super sad. So, the definition of assassination is killing an important person for political reasons. And this often happens with presidents, but it doesn't have to be a president. It could be another politician, somebody who is in the political world. And here is a sentence: the assassination of the president shocked everyone. Now, I am 48 years old. I was not alive when one of our presidents, President Kennedy, was assassinated. He was assassinated in 1963. But I was alive. I was a very small boy when one of our presidents was almost assassinated, and that was President Reagan back in 1981. So, with what happened with President Trump and President Reagan, we would call an attempted assassination. So, they tried to kill the president, but they were unsuccessful. It didn't happen, luckily. The next one, suspect. Suspect. This is a person who might be guilty of a crime, who might have committed a crime, who might have done something illegal. And here is the sentence: the police arrested a suspect after the shooting. Now, if you have been watching the news, this is going to be a big news story in the United States for the next few weeks. And you will hear terms like this: assassination, attempt, suspect. Well, we don't have to worry about the suspect fleeing. In this case, we'll talk about fleeing in a minute, meaning run away, because he was killed at the crime scene. So, no worries there about him trying to do this again. This happened during a campaign. If you've been watching the news at all this year about the United States, you have probably heard this word, campaign. Let's take a look at the definition. It's a series of actions to achieve a goal, often in politics. Not always. Sometimes campaign is also used in war. But in 2024, We have a presidential election. Presidential is the adjective for president. And right now, both candidates, those are people who are hoping to get the job of president, both candidates are campaigning. That means they are doing things to try to get the job. And last night, former President Trump held a rally. We will talk about that. He was giving a speech. This was part of his campaign to become president. So here is the sentence. The candidate continued his campaign despite the threats. So this happens quite a bit where people try to harm a candidate. Maybe we should talk about Mexico right now. And I do want to check the chat. This is live right now. So, hey, Tanya's here. Hafayez is here. Okay, I did not know that. A similar thing happened 2 years ago in Japan. Oh, I did know that. Former prime minister was assassinated. Yeah, so let's really quickly talk about Mexico. So they recently elected a president, our neighbors to the south, Mexico, and there were over 30 assassinations for candidates trying to be president. I was shocked when I heard that. So, as horrible as it is that somebody tried to kill one of our presidential candidates, we don't have 36, I think it was, or 37. Horrible. And I don't want to turn this into a political debate. I will not say if I support President Biden or former President Trump. Two things I don't talk about in English lessons: politics and religion. Tanya, Manuel, Danny, Chris, good to see you here. Adem, Etienne, how are you? Roshan, good to see you. Alex, welcome. Orkan, Nada, glad you could be here. So let's get back into the lesson. We have done 4 terms. I think we have 23. I think we have 23 terms. The next one, I have mentioned this before. You may know this one, but it is speech. Speech. Let's look at the definition. A formal talk given to a group of people. This might terrify some people. In yesterday's live lesson, we talked about fears people have. And one of the fears was giving a speech. So that means talking in front of a group of people. And of course, politicians have to do this often. Here is the example sentence. He was giving a speech when the incident happened. The incident, it's usually a bad thing. So yesterday's attempted assassination could be called an incident. He was giving a speech when the incident happened. Let's talk about this. Presidents, former presidents, and when I say former, I mean they are no longer president, but they were at one time. So presidents, vice presidents, those are people who are second in charge. They get something called Secret Service. Secret Service, really high level security. What's security in English? Well, this is actions taken to keep someone or something safe. So the president and people trying to become president have a lot of security. Those are people that are trying to keep the president safe. There's also something called metal detectors. You go through them in the airport. They look for things that are made of metal, like guns. So there's a lot of security that surrounds presidents, former presidents, presidential candidates. Let's look at the sentence. The security team responded quickly to the shooting. And if you've seen any video from that speech, you will see within 2 seconds, security is swarming President Trump. Swarming. Do you know those little insects? Bees? Bzz, they land on flowers. They swarm. So they move in the same direction at the same time. Security can also swarm. And that's what they did when President Trump was hit in the ear by a bullet. I have pictures of bullets in a minute in case you don't know that term. So security was tight during the president's speech, but somehow a shooter was able to kill somebody in the crowd. Not sure if you have heard that news, but somebody actually died in the crowd. So, of course, my thoughts go out to that person's family. Horrible stuff. A couple other people were injured besides the president. Now, this is something that I have seen talked about in the news over the past 12 hours or so, and that is a hot mic. Hot mic. I thought some people who are learning English might not understand that term. So let's talk about it. If you see in the picture, there is literally a microphone on fire. Now, when you hear hot mic, it's an idiom. That does not mean something is really hot. And mic is short for microphone. So let's pull up some definitions and an example sentence. Hot mic. What is it? It's a microphone that is on and picks up sound. English phrasal verb. You can hear sound coming from the microphone. Hopefully, I have a hot mic right now. Hopefully, it's working. But when you hear hot mic in the news, it's probably picking up something that the audience shouldn't hear. So President Trump was giving a speech. He was hit by the bullet. The microphone did not turn off. So you could hear security talking about what they were going to do next. Here's an example sentence. The politician's comments were accidentally recorded by a hot mic. Ooh, I'm not going to go into it now, but President Trump has been picked up on a hot mic before. He was on a bus, if you remember that almost ended his last presidential campaign. All right, hospitalization. I'll say that a couple times. Hospitalization. You know hospital probably. That is a building where sick people can go and hopefully they get better. But hospitalization can be a noun and it can be a verb. So you can be hospitalized. That's the verb. So people are brought to a hospital, put in there to hopefully get better. So last night, President Trump was hospitalized. He has been released from the hospital. But for a short period of time, he did go to the hospital and he was checked out. Do you know that phrasal verb? Checked out. That means people looked at him to make sure he was safe to leave the hospital. And then he was checked out. Another definition means allowed to leave. Ooh, English phrasal verbs. Don't you love them? Very difficult. But if somebody is hospitalized, it's the verb, that means they are admitted to a hospital for medical care. Medical. The adjective form of medicine. Something that will hopefully make you feel better. The injured politician was hospitalized immediately. Immediately means like right now. They didn't wait. See what I mean? This is a pretty advanced English lesson. So if you need to watch this 2 or 3 times, do not feel bad. Hopefully, I am speaking slowly and clearly enough for you to understand most of this. But the news is really hard to watch in English, sometimes even for native English speakers. Investigation. That is happening right now. What is an investigation? Look below. It's a detailed search for the truth about something. So, right now, investigators, that's the noun, those are people who conduct an investigation or who do an investigation. Conduct is probably the verb we would use, but that is happening right now. Investigators are wondering, how did the shooter get past security? How did that person get on the roof to try to shoot the president? Let's take a break here for a second. I would like to check the chat to make sure there are no questions. Constantine, how are you? Marcus, what's going on? I don't know about that. I don't want to get too much into that. But if you see Marcus's comment there, he put the word coup in his statement. Coup. There's a P at the end. I know, but we pronounce it coup. It's from the French, and it means trying to overtake a government, meaning a government might have a president. A coup would be to try and get rid of that president, like illegally, not by an election. Michael says he visited the Obama's house in Chicago. Interesting. Yeah, President Obama is from Chicago originally. Illinois. Illinois is the state. It ends with an S, but we don't pronounce it. Illinois. All right, Brazil is in the house. Welcome. All right. Question from Tanya. Thank you for being a channel member all of these months. Is the FBI responsible for the investigation or another one? Great question. From what I understand, the first people who were responsible for the investigation were the Secret Service because they were on the scene. But now the investigation has been turned over to the FBI. So as far as I know, the FBI is now in charge of the investigation. But sometimes local authorities will help with the investigation because they might know the area better. And this happened, well, the suspect is from a suburb just outside of Pittsburgh called Bethel something. So local authorities, those are the police in charge of that area, they might help out with the investigation as well. Olga, it is good to see you. Roshan, you are the best explainer teacher. Thank you. Hopefully I am explaining everything well. Yulia, I was going to go back to the lesson, but I must say hello to you. Thank you for all of your support. All right, let's get back to this. We just talked about investigation, but now I want to talk about this critical condition. You will often hear this in the news, and this has been said in recent news about President Trump. Critical condition. Luckily, he was not in critical condition, but 2 spectators were. Spectators are people who are watching. So his speech, 2 spectators were actually in critical condition, which means they were hurt really bad. One person died, two people were in critical condition, very serious medical state, needing urgent care. Urgent. It can't wait. They need to be seen immediately. Those two words are very close. Urgent, something that is very important, has to be done now. Immediately means it is being done now. He is in critical condition after the attack. Critical. It's really serious. It's really bad. You could also hear serious condition. Not quite as bad as critical. You might also hear life-threatening condition, which means their life is in danger. They might not make it. They might not survive. You might hear this as well, eyewitness. What is an eyewitness in English? It's a person who sees something happen and can describe it. Often, when there is a crime, investigators will ask everyone who saw the crime happen, they will ask them, what did you see? Can you explain it to us? That way, the investigators will have a better idea of what happened. So here is a sentence. An eyewitness described the shooting in detail. Sometimes eyewitnesses are so shocked by what they saw, they can't really explain what happened. Sometimes they can, but eyewitness testimony, it's a big word in English. That just means what the eyewitness said. Eyewitness testimony can't always be trusted. I'm not sure if you have ever been in a crazy situation where a crime has happened, but often people can't remember everything. But an eyewitness is someone who sees a crime happen. Flee. This is a verb I've heard quite often when watching the news about the shooting, and that means to run away from danger. Flee. So people in the crowd might have fled after they heard the shooting. You can see in the picture, this person is definitely running away from danger. It looks like he might be in New York City. He looks scared and he looks like he is running. So the suspect, we talked about suspect earlier, didn't we? That is a person who might have committed a crime. The suspect tried to flee the scene. I don't think the suspect tried to flee the scene when it came to President Trump because somebody quickly shot him. Yeah, so he did not try to run away. You will see this quite often over the next few days. Press conference. Press conference. You may hear the verb like to press a button. This is different. It's not a verb. It's a noun. It's something. It's people. The press are people who work for newspapers, they work for television stations, and they tell us the news. They report on the news. So a press conference is a meeting to give information to the media. In the United States, we have something called the freedom of the press. And that means as long as it is true, a reporter can say maybe the president did a bad thing. As long as it is true, reporters can be honest. I know in some countries they can't, but in the United States, we like to think that there is the freedom of the press. The news can say what is true. They can't make up lies, but they can say something true even if it makes the president look bad. So often, almost every day, President Biden will have a press conference. He will not be in the room, but his press secretary will, and she will answer questions from reporters. So again, a press conference, it's a meeting to give information to the media. And here's a sentence. The mayor held a press conference about the incident. A mayor is the leader of a city. President is the leader of a country. Governor is the leader of one of our 50 states. President, governor, mayor. Uh-oh. This next one, panic. Panic. If you look at that picture and you see that person's face, it says it all. Panic. Sudden fear that causes people to act without thinking. So you can imagine there was a lot of panic after those gunshots were heard. There was probably a lot of confusion too. People didn't know what was going on, and then they were scared. Panic. There was panic among the crowd after the shooting. Of course, people are scared. Panic is like a lot of fear, a lot of confusion. Look at that person's face. That is the face of panic, for sure. So for this next one, we're going to talk about something called a bulletproof vest, but we need to talk about what bullets are, just in case you don't know. So you probably know gun. Now you know bullet. Just look at the picture. Those things are called bullets in English. They are put into the gun and then they come out really fast when you pull the trigger. So those are bullets. And now I would like to talk about a bulletproof vest. It is likely that President Trump was wearing a bulletproof vest under his suit. I have not heard that on the news, but I think most of the time, presidents, people trying to become president, they wear bulletproof vests. Security probably wears bulletproof vests. You probably have a name for this in your language. But in English, a bulletproof vest is clothing that protects against bullets. The security guards wore bulletproof vests. Now, you could wear a vest, and it's not bulletproof. A vest is just a shirt without sleeves. Right now, I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt. Sleeve is the part of the shirt that covers your arms. You could have a long sleeve shirt. You could have a short sleeve shirt. We sometimes call this a t-shirt. Or you could have a vest, which means there are no sleeves. Oh, you could also have a tank top. I don't have a picture of a tank top. What about this? Crime scene. Crime scene. Hopefully you know crime. That is something bad that happens. And a crime scene is where that something bad happened. So let's look at the definition here. It's the place where a crime happened. The police closed off the crime scene for investigators. So we've talked about investigators. It's a hard word. Closed off. Do you know that phrasal verb when we talk about crime scene? That means people can't go there anymore. The police may have put up police tape. Do you see that yellow thing in the picture? We call that police tape. So the police or the investigators have closed off a place because a crime happened there. Now, in just a few minutes, we're going to talk about another phrasal verb that means closed off that you might hear in the news. What about this one? Surveillance. Surveillance. And in the picture, you can see a person looking at a lot of different television screens. And there are probably cameras set up all around this place. So there is surveillance. What does surveillance mean? It means watching somebody closely or watching an area closely. The area was under constant surveillance. So maybe 24/7, people were watching to make sure crimes weren't happening. The president lives in the White House. It's the name of the president's house, the White House. You can imagine the White House is under constant surveillance. There are cameras everywhere to make sure a crime doesn't happen. Surveillance. Very fancy term to mean investigators are watching. Surveillance. So sometimes if they think a person is going to do harm to a president, maybe they wrote something on social media, investigators could have that person under surveillance, which means they watch their every move. But unfortunately, the suspect that was killed yesterday was not under surveillance before. If he was, he probably couldn't have tried to shoot the president or shoot the former president. Rally. Do you know this term? President Biden, former President Trump will be having a lot of rallies over the next couple months. We, the American people, vote for our president in November. Before then, President Biden, former President Trump will have many rallies. They will have a lot of rallies. Well, what are they? They are large public meetings, often for political reasons. So, yesterday, President Trump was having a rally, meaning a lot of people came to watch him speak about what he would do if he became president again. And most of the people, if not all, were his supporters. The people in the audience were the people who supported him, people who wanted him to become president. Here's a sentence. He was speaking at a rally when the shooting occurred, when the shooting happened. So he was speaking at a rally when the shooting occurred. The next one, target. Now, in the picture, you see that circular thing. Do you know that adjective? It means describing something that looks like a circle. So that circular thing with black and white stripes, it's a dartboard. We call that in English. And that sharp thing in the middle of the dartboard, we call it dart. So when people play darts, they try to hit the target. They try to hit the bullseye. That's the middle part of a dartboard in English. But the target, when it comes to a shooting, is the person or the thing aimed at. So yesterday, former President Trump was the target for the shooter. That is who the person was aiming at. The shooter was aiming, meaning trying to hit President Trump. The politician was the target of the attack. Now, unfortunately, 3 people in the crowd were also targets, but they were probably not the intended target. You might hear that term in the news, intended target. That means the person, the shooter, was trying to hit. But 3 people in the crowd and the audience were also hurt. 1 person was killed, unfortunately. They are dead now. Their family was with them in the crowd. And there were also 2 other people in critical condition, I believe. I'm not sure if they are getting better. I have a sentence here for you that you might read in the news or you might hear on television. Former President Trump was the target of the attempted assassination. Now, we've talked about all of those words in this lesson already, so hopefully that sentence makes sense. Former President Trump was the target of the attempted assassination. And if you don't understand that sentence now, maybe you want to rewatch this English lesson. Pretty hard. I know. All right. The next one. This is the one I thought, oh no, I need to be careful how I pronounce this. So it's perpetrator. Perpetrator. You will definitely hear that in the news. Perpetrator. What is it? It's a person who did something bad or illegal. So the shooter yesterday, the person with the gun, you could call them the suspect because that means maybe they did something bad, or you could call them the perpetrator. So that's the person who definitely did something bad. He was the perpetrator. The perpetrator was arrested by the police. Should I say that a couple more times? Perpetrator. Doesn't even sound like a real word, right? I promise it is. Perpetrator. Maybe you want to say that as you are watching this lesson. Perpetrator. The perpetrator was arrested by the police. How's that for practicing your speaking? The perpetrator was arrested by the police. All right, let's check the chat here. I have probably missed a few things. So, Constantine says, Yulia, привет, привет. Hello. All right. Chris is wondering, emergency condition or critical condition, are they used interchangeably? Well, emergency condition, I don't think is a medical term. So I've never heard that. But other ones you might hear are stable condition. So that's used, you will hear that in the news. And that means like the person is in good condition. You might hear that too. Good condition, stable condition, serious condition, critical condition. But yeah, I would not use emergency condition. Yes, Constantine, I talked about that earlier. President Kennedy, it was a successful, I guess we would say. It was an actual assassination. Unfortunately, President Kennedy did die November 22nd, 1963, I believe. In the 60s, there were three very famous assassinations. So you had President Kennedy in 1963. And in 1968, you had two other famous people assassinated. President Kennedy's brother, Robert Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King. Both of them were killed in 1968. They were assassinated in 1968. Learn English with Jess. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Looks like you are from Canada. What a great country. Did Donald Trump get hurt? Yeah, Shama, if you see the footage, that means the video. If you see the footage, you can see that the top of former President Trump's ear was grazed by a bullet. That might be a new verb. So it wasn't a direct hit. Graze means just barely hit. So luckily the bullet grazed him. It did not directly hit him. All right. Tanya has gifted a membership to somebody. Thank you so much. You know what I should do right now? As a thank you to members, let me change this to members only chat just in case members have a question and I can answer that really quickly. But thank you. It does look like we have a new member. Tanya, thank you for being so supportive. I have a little something for you. New member. Make sure you check the members tab for the Discord, the members chat, and the bonus videos. Oh no. I wanted to take a sip of water while that was playing, but I did not take the cap off my water. So I'm sorry. You will have to wait just for a second while I take a sip of water. Quick sip. Quick sip. All right. Shall we get back to the lesson? And I will wait for those members' questions to come in. Right. Back to the live lesson here. You know it's live, right? Because it's taking me a second to get to the next one. So we talked about perpetrator. Now, what I would like to talk about is crowd control. Crowd control. You will see this at airports. And I believe this picture is probably at an airport. You can see there are rows of people. They can't walk wherever they want. So that would be crowd control. And at presidential rallies, there is definitely crowd control. People cannot just walk up to the president or the person speaking. There are places people can go and places people can't go. That is crowd control. So here is the formal definition: actions taken to manage a large group of people. Police used barriers. In the picture, you can see barriers. It's things that make it so people can't go somewhere. I see two barriers in that photo. The police used barriers for crowd control at the scene. So, unfortunately, the crowd control did not work yesterday. There will be an investigation into that. How did that person get on the roof with a gun? Kind of crazy. All right. I'm not sure if we had any members asking questions, but a lot of times I forget. So let me move this back to anyone. Anyone can chat. So maybe we'll get some trolls. You don't have to be a subscriber. You can just wander into the chat and maybe be a troll. I don't know. Crowd control. Now, earlier we talked about close off. That is a phrasal verb you might hear after a crime has been committed, but you might also hear cordon off in the news. Cordon off, if you know close off, it's the same thing. Cordon off, to block an area to prevent people from entering. And this often happens after a crime has been committed. That yellow police tape will be put up to cordon off the scene. Here it is in a sentence. The police cordoned off the area where the shooting happened. Pretty simple, I think. You know what? This one might not be so simple because it is an idiom. Lone wolf. I've heard that plenty of times while watching the news since the shooting happened. Lone wolf. In the picture, I have an actual wolf. A wolf in English is that thing. So it is a wild dog. A dog that might live out in the forest. It's wild. It's not a domestic dog. If you hear domestic, think like house, tamed. A domestic dog lives inside a house. Hopefully, it doesn't bite people. It's a good dog. Wolves, crazy. They might attack you. They might bite you. They're not tame. But when you hear lone wolf, when it comes to a crime, that means a person who did it alone. They didn't have any help. Let's take a look at the formal definition. It's a person who acted alone without help from others, especially when committing a crime. So hopefully, the shooter from yesterday was a lone wolf. He did not have any help. He did this all by himself. That's what the investigation is trying to find out now. Did this person have help? How did he get to the roof? Did somebody let him in? How did he get his gun? Did somebody help him get his gun? Hopefully, he was a lone wolf. He did it all on his own. So here's a sentence using lone wolf. The shooter was described as a lone wolf, acting without support, acting without help. Hopefully, that is the case. All right, background check. Background check. I teach in a public school in the United States. I had to have a background check before I got the job. A lot of people, probably everyone who works with the president, has to have a background check. Maybe you have had a background check for your job. What is it? Investigation. So we have talked about that term. An investigation into a person's history. So what have you done before? Often for criminal records. So a background check might look to see, have you committed a crime? Have you got a parking ticket? So if you have, do you know parking ticket in English? It's when you parked your car in a place you shouldn't, or you parked there for too long. So background checks might find that you had a parking ticket 10 years ago. They probably don't care about that. They care about if you have committed serious crimes, if you have done bad things in your life. So here's a sentence using lone wolf and background check. The lone wolf had no prior criminal history, as shown in the background check. And I do think that is true. When they looked into the person who did the shooting yesterday, they had no prior criminal record. Prior. In that sentence, prior might be new for you. That means things that have already happened in the past, prior. All right, that is the lesson on watching the news from the United States over the next couple weeks. This story isn't going anywhere. That means it's going to be talked about for the next couple weeks, maybe the next couple months. It will definitely be in the history books. All right, just checking a couple. India's in the house. Cowboy codes. Hello. All right. Manual. In Spain, lone wolf. We always say lone wolf, not lonely. Lone wolf. Oh, wait, hang on. Maybe this is something in Spanish. In Spain, lonely wolf is the person who doesn't want anyone to tell their. Oh, okay. I won't say that word. It's not a bad word. I just won't say it out loud. All right. So, Michael, you've had background checks, huh? Yeah, it happens. All of the teachers in the United States have to pass a background check to get hired. So, you know what will prevent somebody from being hired is if they have a DUI. In English, in the United States, a DUI is when somebody drank alcohol and they drove a car while they were drunk. DUI, driving under the influence. So if you have that, you probably won't get a job teaching. In fact, I know a couple teachers that I have worked with. They have gotten DUIs and then they got fired. So yeah, that's something that is taken pretty seriously. Teachers who drink alcohol, go driving, they could really hurt somebody. So interesting. So right now, the police are raiding the suspect's home. Great verb to know. Raiding. It is when the police enter somebody's house and the owner of the house doesn't know they're coming. So the police are raiding the suspect's house. Now, in the United States, it is illegal for the police to raid somebody's house without permission. So the police have to go to a judge, and the judge will issue something called a search warrant, and that makes it legal. So to get a search warrant, the judge has to think that a crime has been committed. So it's unlikely the police will raid my house. I haven't committed any crimes. But because this suspect is thought to have been the shooter, pretty good evidence that he was, since he was killed with a gun next to him, the judge issued a search warrant and the police were able to raid the house. All right. Hopefully that. Hey, good to see you again. All right. Yeah. Look at that. Najib. Happy to help with DUI. All right. Cowboy Codes has also had a background check. Well, I can't thank you enough for everyone joining. Like I said, maybe earlier, you would want to watch this a second time. Oh, can you please like the video? That really helps the channel. It helps other people find Cowboy Code. Hey, I did not know you were a channel member. Thank you for becoming a channel member. If you are a channel member, there are over 200 bonus English lessons for you. So you might want to look at them. 200. I release a bonus English lesson once a week, sometimes twice a week. Thank you all for joining. There will be a new English lesson out this week about talking about bad food in English. I filmed that while I was in Iceland, Poland, and Turkey. 3 different countries, 1 lesson, and there will be a live lesson next weekend. Welcome. How are you? Another live lesson. I'm not sure if you are in the United States, but if you are, the only news that is being shown is about the election. So I thought if you are learning American English and you are following the American news, then we should talk about elections in English. So in today's English lesson, I am going to describe 25 different ways you can talk about the elections in the United States, and they will be for American elections. Other countries might do it differently. We are going to focus on the United States here. So before we get into the lesson, I would like to say hello to a few people. Tanya, hope you're doing well. I saw Dennis is here. Yulia, welcome. Hafiez is here. Rest, hope you're doing well. Mary Posa, it's been a little while. Good to see you. Chris, welcome. Manuel, welcome. Freddie Wolf is here. All right, so this should last about 30 to 40 minutes. We'll talk about maybe 1 minute for each topic. I don't know. We'll see. Mohammed, how are you? Etienne is here too. Welcome. All right. Let's do this. I got a lot for you here. And I don't want to waste your time. If you are watching on replay, hello. If you are watching now, could you please hit that like button? It will just help other people find the lesson. The first one we have ballot. Ballot. For each of these topics, I will have a sentence and I will have a definition for you. So the first one, ballot. It's paper with a list of candidates or issues to vote on. I marked my choices on the ballot and put them in the box. So in the picture, you will see that piece of paper is called the ballot, and they are putting it into the ballot box. Now, each state is different when it comes to elections. So, my state, I live in the state of Maine, it is different from California or Florida or New York. And we still have paper ballots. You have to use a very thick black pen, which they give you, and then you will mark in your ballot. It's a phrasal verb we might use, or you might use fill in. A lot of times it's a circle. And so you take that black marker and fill in the circle for the candidate. We will talk about candidate in just a second. Or you could be voting on the school budget. My town just had an election or a referendum, we might call it, when people aren't involved, about the school budget. So more money had to go to the school and the citizens had to vote. Should we increase the budget? Should we give more money to the school or should we not? How about this one? I've mentioned this already. Candidate. It's always a person. Candidate. You may be familiar with the American presidential election. Presidential. That is the adjective we would use to describe an election to try and elect a president. Election is the noun. We are having an election. We are trying to elect our next president. Elect is the verb. So the candidate, what is that? It's a person trying to be elected. Each candidate gave a speech at the town hall. So the leader of a town or a city in the United States is a mayor. So if somebody is running for mayor, that's the verb we use. President Biden is running for president. President Trump is running for president. If a candidate is running for mayor, they may give a speech at town hall. And town hall is like where the government of the city takes place. Campaign is the next one. You will hear this word a lot. Both President Biden and former President Trump are campaigning right now. This is another word in English that can be a noun or it can be a verb. Let's talk about the noun first. The campaign. What is it? Activities to get people to vote for a candidate. So last week, when President Trump was shot, he was campaigning. He was holding a rally. I think we did rally last week. He was holding a rally to try to get people fired up to vote for him. That is an English phrasal verb we can use to mean like make them excited. President Trump was holding a rally to fire up people to get them to vote for him. So, what is a campaign? Activities to get people to vote for a candidate. The campaign volunteers knocked on doors to promote their candidate. That happens a lot in my neighborhood around this time of year. Volunteers. That might be a new word for you. A volunteer is someone who gives their time for something and they don't get paid. So you might have campaign volunteers. These are people who really like the candidate. They may say, I am going to work for free. I am going to try to get other people to vote for you. So who knows? Maybe today I might have somebody knock on my door and say, hey, have you heard about President Biden and what he wants to do for the next 4 years? Or, hey, former President Trump, let me tell you about them and why you should vote for them. So, a campaign, it's all those things that candidates do to try to get elected. Let's check the chat here. We are only 3 terms in, just to make sure there are no questions. We will get to number 4 in a minute. Sheet ballot. Really? I would say paper ballot. Paper ballot, probably. Mahmoud, how are you? I see you here. Still having internet issues. I am sorry. Chris is wondering where Mahmoud lives. He lives in Mauritania. All right, question. Tanya, thank you so much. Does every politician keep their title like president or governor, even though they are no longer in that position? They do. They do. It's just a sign of respect. For instance, if you're watching the news, you might hear people say former President Trump. That's a lot of words to say. So a lot of people will say President Trump, President Obama, President Bush. You know, the former doesn't usually get said. Roshan, hey, I'm doing well. Thank you for being a channel member. Later on, I will have a time where just channel members can chat. I learned that from Bob the Canadian. All right, let's get back to the lesson. That's why you are here. We just talked about campaign. It can be a noun. So they are running a campaign right now, or they are campaigning door to door, trying to get votes. Okay. This is a little tricky. Primary elections. When you think primary, think first. I will focus on presidential elections today because that is in the news. But we have primary elections and we have the general election. So in the spring, each state held a primary election. And let's talk about what that is. And it's an election to choose a party's candidate. Let me say that again in clearer English. We will talk about political parties a little later, and we'll talk about what third parties are. But in the United States, we have 2 major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. A couple years ago, I did an English lesson on what is the difference. It's been doing pretty well. People are being shown that and they are watching it. So if you want to search American English with Brent, American English with this guy, and look for Republicans and Democrats, You should find it. So Joe Biden might be. Right now, he is the pick for the Democrats. And President Trump is definitely the pick for the Republicans. In the spring, each state held an election. The Democrats chose their candidate, and the Republicans chose their candidate. Now, since spring, I probably won't get into this too much, but the Democrats are having second thoughts. So they are not sure they made the right decision, at least some of them. But last week, the Republicans had a convention. That's not one of our terms, where Republicans get together and they say, yes, we like our candidate. So in the primaries, Biden was elected for the Democrats. Trump was elected for the Republicans. And it usually happens in the spring. We elect our president in November. Primary elections. I will read it one more time. It's an election to choose a party's candidate. Here's a sentence to help you understand that term. The primary election decides who will represent the party in the main election. Now, notice the way Maine is spelled, M-A-I-N. I live in the state of Maine. It's M-A-I-N-E, Maine. And then in November, in the main election or the general election, citizens will vote. They will either vote for President Biden for another 4 years, or they will vote for President Trump for another 4 years. This term, you will hear this quite a bit when watching the news right now. The incumbent. Incumbent. I think we only use this term when talking about elections. What is the incumbent? It's the current office holder who is running again. By this definition, President Biden is the incumbent. He has the job before the election, and he's trying to get the job again after the election. The incumbent. President Biden is the incumbent president. Here's a sentence. The incumbent mayor has a strong chance of winning again. We can use this for governors. We can use this for presidents. We can use this for mayors. All right, earlier, I talked about ballots. Now we need to talk about polling place. This is the place where citizens will cast their vote. That's the verb we use, cast. I need to do an entire English lesson on that word cast. You can use it with fishing. You can use it when people get injured. But a polling place, let's look at the definition. It's a place where people go to vote. It's a place where people will cast their vote. So it's an actual place. A lot of times it's a school. It may be a church. Yeah, mostly schools and churches become polling places on election day. My polling place is at the local elementary school where I used to work. I used to work at a middle school. Last year, I was working at a middle school. And on election day, I had to park in a different place because my school became a polling place. Our gymnasium turned into a place where people could vote. Well, maybe they don't like the lines. A lot of times you have to wait in a line before you can vote. It can get pretty busy before people go to work or after people get out of work. So, what is an absentee ballot? We talked about ballot already. That's what you fill in to pick who you want to become president or mayor. Absentee ballot. It's a ballot for someone who cannot vote in person, or maybe they don't want to. You fill this in before and you mail it. Absentee voting. Each state is a little different. Sometimes you need to get in your absentee ballot a week before the election. So it's a little different for each state. I have never voted by absentee. And if you look at that first part of the word absent, it means not there. So in the morning, when I look at my classroom and I look at my students, some of them might be absent, which means they're not there. If they're present, they are there. If they're absent, they are not there. And here's a sentence for absentee ballot. I mailed in my absentee ballot last week. Yeah. So I think I will go to my polling place, which is an elementary school in my town, in my part of the town, and I will cast my vote there. But sometimes people who are serving in the military, they may be in a different country, but they still want to vote in our elections. They can vote by absentee ballot. All right, let's take a second here. We ended on 9. We ended on 8. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. Russia is in the house. Welcome. Hey, from Turkey. All right. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Ison? Probably wrong. Sorry. Why are there only 2 political parties in the United States? Great question. We will talk about more. There are more political parties. We'll talk about independence later. But I think the easiest way to answer that is money. It costs a lot of money to campaign for president or run for president. And those 2 parties have a lot of donations. So I think it comes down to money. The Republicans and the Democrats get a lot of donations each year. How about this? Elon Musk. You probably have heard of him. He is donating $45 million a month until November to the Republican Party. Crazy, crazy. All right, Hafez. All right, do they happen every year or every 4 years, like the primary and general elections? Okay. So for president, primary elections and general elections happen only every 4 years. But there are other years where we will vote for mayors, governors, Senate, House of Representatives. So those are all terms that I might do in a future lesson. Incumbent, pretty much currently. Yes, yes. So the incumbent president will be running again. Man, I didn't expect to teach this. But we also have an idiom for like lame duck president. That means a president who has been president for 8 years already and can't run again. Lame duck president. Interesting. Manuel says local elementary school in Spain as well. All right, Michael. Oh, who hires the people that help at the polling places? That's a great question. So I believe they are all volunteers. There might be one local person in charge of it, But I know for years, my mother, after she retired, she would volunteer at the polling place. So most of the people you see there, they might be involved in politics. They are passionate about politics. So they volunteer their time to help people. They have to find your name. Yeah. I could do a whole lesson on going to the polls and voting. And each state is different. We'll talk about voter registration in a minute. Mega, how are you? Welcome. All right, Freddie, about the second Democratic's thought, it will not be too late to change their candidate and therefore be much more difficult to succeed. Okay, so at this point, President Biden won the primary election. Only he can decide if he wants to drop out. And right now, if you watch the news, some people will say he will drop out this weekend. Hasn't happened yet. Some say he's staying in. He isn't going anywhere. But because he won the primary elections in each state for the Democrats, he should be their candidate. Now, if he doesn't want to, maybe Kamala Harris, who is the vice president right now, she is the incumbent vice president. Maybe she will be the Democratic Party's choice. All right. Well, arrest. What are Americans saying about the attempted assassination of Trump? Well, everybody is saying something different. But I think the big question for most Americans would be, how did this happen? Like, shouldn't there be security? You would think so, right? All right, let's get back to the lesson. Great questions. All right. Yeah, Dennis, I don't know about this. What about electronic or online voting? I don't know if any state is doing this right now. But I know a lot of people think that there could be like more. I think a lot of people think that paper ballots are safer. They're more secure. It's hard to rig paper ballots. Rig means like to cheat. So we'll see. So the results of the general election will be when, Hafiez would like to know. For some states, it will be that day. So we vote on November 5th, 2024 for our president. Some states, like California, like I already know, President Biden is going to win California. But there are some other states, we will talk about swing states soon. It might take days. It might take weeks if the results are close. So if one candidate wins by 51% of the vote, it might take a long time to know the results. And each state. Okay, let's talk about the next one here. It's Electoral College. This is the one I am most worried about teaching. Electoral College. All right. Let me take a drink of water. Okay. The Electoral College. This is only used when we vote for president and vice president. So let's look at the formal definition. It's a group of people who formally elect the president and vice president. Now, I asked AI to draw a picture for us, and they did not do a good job. but at least you can see a map of the United States. So each state, depending on how many people live in that state, will get a vote in the Electoral College. My state is small, so we get 4 electoral votes. California is our biggest state. I think they get 54 electoral votes. So, whichever candidate gets the most votes in that state, the candidate will get all of those Electoral College votes. So President Biden is going to win California. There is no question about it. It's a blue state. They always vote Democratic. President Biden will get all 54 electoral votes from California. Maine and Nebraska are the only 2 states that could split their Electoral College votes. I think in the last election, President Biden got 3 of our 4 votes, and President Trump got 1 of our 4 votes. You need 270 Electoral College votes to win the presidency. I hope I did a good job explaining that. There are a lot of Americans who don't know how the Electoral College works. It's very confusing. You might also hear something called the popular vote. And that means whoever gets the most votes from all over the country. So, like back in 2016, if you remember somebody called Hillary Clinton, she won the popular vote. She got more votes than President Trump. But we don't elect our president by the popular vote. It's by Electoral College. If you have questions about that, let me know in the chat if you are watching live. All right, the next one we have is debate. This became a very famous term a couple weeks ago. What is a debate? It's a formal discussion, or it should be a formal discussion between candidates. So there are often rules about who can speak, when they can speak, how long they have to speak. And to be honest, the one debate that President Trump and President Biden had a couple weeks ago, the rules were followed because they turned off the candidates' microphones. But usually, the candidates will talk about what they are going to do when they become president, how they will make the country better. But most of the time, in that last debate, the candidates talked about how bad the other person was. Here's a sentence with debate. The debate between the candidates was on TV. The debate between candidates was on TV. And I think since 1960, when President Kennedy and future President Nixon debated, all presidential debates have been on television. All right, the next one, voter registration. Big word there, registration. We'll also talk about register, which is the verb. What is voter registration? The process of signing up to vote. Now, I am a registered voter. I think I had to go to City Hall or Town Hall. That's the place of my city's government. And I had to fill out a form to register to vote. And now I can vote. It's different in every state. I believe my state of Maine is the only state where you can register to vote on the day of the election. Most states, you have to do it before, maybe like a month before. My daughter, she just turned 18 in February. She has to register to vote if she wants to vote in November. I already asked her. She said she is going to do that at her college. They have a day where they register everyone to vote at her college. So, different for each state. What about polls? Okay, earlier we talked about polling place. This is just a little different. Poll. What is it? You can take a poll. I think I've done it on YouTube before. What is a poll? It's a survey of people's opinions. So you ask a question to get an idea of how people think. And guess what? The Democratic Party right now is taking a lot of polls. They are wondering, can President Biden beat President Trump in November? You ask people what they think. That is what a poll is. The latest polls show a close race between the candidates. You can see in the picture, people are raising their hands. So this is happening in person. Like, hey, who do you want to be president? Show me some hands if you think President Trump should be president again. Show me some hands if you think President Biden should be president. That would be a poll. I didn't want to do a poll here on YouTube. It might get too many people. That's two things I don't like talking about on YouTube. Just too many fights, right? People are very passionate. Religion and politics. I don't mind discussing it. Like, I'm hoping right now nobody knows who I'm going to vote for in November. We're just talking about facts. So, poll. You can take a poll. I think that's the verb we would use most of the time. Hey, I need to take a poll. How many people want grilled cheese for lunch? Okay, this was a big topic earlier this week. Running mate. Running mate. You will hear that only with presidential elections. You will only hear that for president. What is a running mate? A candidate for the second important position. President, vice president. So President Trump needed to pick a running mate. Last week, the Republicans had their national convention. I know these are big words, but a national convention is when a lot of Republicans get together. That's the Republican National Convention. In about a month, all of the Democrats will get together and they will have their convention where they pick their candidate who won in the primaries. I hope that makes sense. And during the convention, the president or the candidate for president will pick their running mate. And last week, President Trump picked a guy named J.D. Vance to be his running mate. So you vote for both president and vice president at the same time. Like, a person cannot go to a polling place and vote for President Trump to be president and Vice President Kamala Harris. Can't do it. They run on a ticket. They run together. So here is a sentence. The presidential candidate announced his running mate yesterday. All right, let's just hit the table. Let's check the chat. Make sure there are no questions. My goodness. it's a tough topic as I'm explaining this. This would be very tough. Yeah. As Brigitte said, it's very tough. All right. Lots of questions here. Going back. Let's see. I think we were here. Yeah, Hafez had the last one. All right. Okay, Manuel is wondering. So the paradox could be you elected a president with fewer votes than defeated. It happens. It happens quite a bit, but the popular vote doesn't matter. It's the Electoral College that matters for president. Every other political position, it's done by popular vote, meaning who gets the most votes from the people. Yeah, very complicated. Freddie Wolf. Alaska was missing. It might have been. Yeah, AI is not perfect. It's Hafez. I heard that Biden and Trump and Biden talked about golfing. Yeah, they were challenging each other to golf. It was just like two little kids. Hey, I'm a better golfer than you. No, I'm a better golfer than you are. All right. No. Tanya, your question here. Is there a possibility to change the voting system from Electoral College to the popular vote? There is, but it will probably never happen. It has to go through Congress, and it has to go through the states, and like 4/5, I think, have to ratify it. That's the verb we would use. It is. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but no. Short answer is no. We are good or bad. We are stuck with the Electoral College for a long time. Yeah. Probably not going to happen. Hey, just as a thank you to members, and in case anybody else would like to be a member, let's do members only chat right now. Thank you, Bob the Canadian. He taught me this, and we will do it for about 5 minutes. Okay. Hey, Siri, set the timer for 5 minutes because I'll forget and I'll get scared when the timer goes off. It's funny. People sometimes make a mistake thinking the Electoral College is the place. Yeah. Careful. You said colleague there. That's like somebody you work with. But yeah, Electoral College sounds like a place you would visit, but it's not. Z is wondering, why do you have to register? Well, because they worry about voter fraud. Voter fraud is a term you might hear. Fraud, fake. Think of it that way. So if you didn't have to register to vote, maybe I could go to the polling place 3 different times. Maybe I could go in another city and just keep voting for the person I want to win. So voter registration, the idea is that it limits a person to only one vote. They can only vote once. No. Arrest. Trump won more of the Electoral College than Biden. No, he didn't. No, Biden. That's the only way you can win the presidency is if you get 270 votes or more in the Electoral College. That's how we vote, or that's how we choose our president. Now, I said earlier, in 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but she was not elected president. Okay. Yeah. Chris, I almost put a couple examples of this. So Chris has a pair of homophones and he has written pole, P-O-L-E, and poll, P-O-L-L. So I talked about P-O-L-L. It's like a vote. Like, hey, how many people want turkey sandwiches for lunch? The other one would be like the North and the South Pole. In English, we say the very top of the earth and the very bottom of the earth are the earth's poles. And it's spelled P-O-L-E. A pole might also be a thin piece of metal that holds up a building. There's also a barber pole when you get a haircut. Yeah, my hair, by the way, it's falling out, but it will come back in after my hair transplant. Oh, Hafiez, I like what you did there. So he just said he went on a run. He brought a friend, called that friend his running mate. I like it. Yeah, Michael says J.D. Vance was Trump's choice. Yes, so if President Trump wins in November, it will be Vice President Vance. Freddie is wondering, I've heard that each U.S. citizen has to mention their political political opinion on their driver's license. Is that true? No. No. Now, maybe what you are thinking. So you can register to vote, okay? You can register as a Republican. You can register as a Democrat. You can register as an independent, which means neither party, kind of like in the middle. You're on your own. We have a couple other parties like the Green Party. They're not as popular. So you do have to register as a Republican if you want to vote in the primary elections. So the Republican Party holds their primaries, the Democrats hold their primaries. So when you register to vote, if you want to vote in the primary elections, you have to register as a Democrat or a Republican. I am an independent. See, I knew it. Always scares me. I am registered as an independent, so I cannot vote in the primaries, which I'm fine with that. All right, anyone can chat now. Welcome. Hey, thank you, channel members. Yeah, but basically, yeah, they would have to modify the Constitution. Manuel is saying, and I remembered in school, but it would be very complicated to talk about right now. But I believe it has to go to Congress, which is they're in Washington. They're also elected officials. I think it's 3/4 of the vote. 3/4 have to vote to ratify the Constitution, and then it has to go to each state. And I think you need 4/5 to do that. It's very hard to change the Constitution, which we will talk about later on in this lesson. All right, we should probably. Etienne is wondering, yeah, why use that system? Is it because some states are more important than others? Yeah, it could be. So, what the Electoral College does is it forces presidential candidates to think about smaller states. So, if we didn't have the Electoral College, probably like California, Texas, New York, Florida, they're big states, they have a lot of people. The candidates would forget about little old Maine and little old New Hampshire, which they do forget about Maine a lot of times. But New Hampshire is important in the primary elections. They are the first state to hold a primary election. All right, so we should get back to the lesson. A lot of questions, I'm sure, because it's difficult. All right, Kevin, whoever sent me the membership, I want to say thank you. I think that was Tanya last week. She did give out a membership. So I think it is Tanya who you should thank. Yeah, the founding fathers, Chris said. The founding fathers are a group of men that we talk about who were like the first political figures in the United States.